Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Landry with EVOQ Bike, and I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, fellow Colorado native, Keegan Swerble.
hmm
Say hello, Keegan.
Yep. What's up, guys? Hi, guys. I'm glad to be here.
You probably already know Keegan. He's been on the pod a few times, and we just recently brought him on as a coach. He's a legendary climber racing over in Europe for FAPEL. Finished top
Yeah,
10 at Tour of Utah, Tour de Langkawi, climbing beast, and we thought we would sit down and have a conversation about the top mistakes that we made starting out in cycling. When you start out, you just don't know. You don't know what you're doing, and I think pretty much everybody
yeah.
started from the same place. So if you're new to cycling, maybe you can learn a thing or two, and if you're experienced cyclist, you can at least derive some level of enjoyment from our past experiences, or maybe you relate
The
to some of the
the
things
rid-
that the ridiculous things that we went to. I'm sure many of us made the same mistakes. Um, so why don't you just kick us off, Keegan, and tell us what your top mistake was when you were starting out as a cyclist, circa
yeah,
10 years ago, maybe 11.
yeah. So this, for me, in my case, I started as an 18-year-old, like a full-on road cyclist. That was kind of my start, and I guess my first point is going to be more directed at the youngsters, these young kids. And I mean, it can also be, it can also happen to anyone age, it's just we have this obsession as cyclists that weight is so important. Like, I mean, we all know we want our bike to be as light as it possibly can. We want our everything. We spend thousands for the bike to be light, so we all get into this idea of like, okay, well, I need my body to be as light as it can too. And yeah, before I even really knew anything about road cycling at all, I knew that I felt like I had to starve myself, like literally before I'd even done a road race in my life, I was already like just, weighing my food, doing all that. And there's in some ways it's good that there's a higher level of consciousness when it comes to your diet when you start trying to really and keep in mind, I guess I should always mention that like I was on at this team, the action cycling team, and that was it. My goal was to get to the highest level of the sport. So it was a serious thing. It wasn't like a weekend warrior type gig that I was doing this for. But yeah, basically one thing led to another, and I just found myself eating nothing. And I didn't really. It wasn't like a disordered eating. It was more so just that I just thought that's what you had to do. Like
Totally.
as a bike rider, you eat salads for dinner every night, like no questions asked. And I did my first entire season just literally just eating super light on every dinner and just miserable. Honestly, I remember that summer and I just was absolutely miserable. And I'll never forget, I did my very first tour of Utah that year. And Teo Gegenhardt, who's now a Grand Tour winner, was on my team at this time. And he would always kind of see me eating, a salad while we're in the Tour of Utah race, like a 7 day ridiculously hard stage race. And I'm eating salad for dinner. And he would always just tell me, like, no, dude, like in the race, you got to just accept your weight and like just smash the food. But I was like, yeah, I know more than you, Teo Gegenhardt. And so yeah, I did the first couple of stages, and I remember the third stage, I barely finished the stage. I was so weak. And that night at dinner, I like cracked, just totally cracked on my diet, my salad diet, and I just went nuts. I just ate plate after plate of brownies. Never forget it. It was a real story. Next day was the first mountaintop finish. Third stage, I barely finished the stage in the gruppetto. And I literally remember thinking after the stage, like, all right, I don't think I'm made for the sport. Like, what am I doing here? I'm way out of my league. Eat the brownies, wake up the next day, got the glycogen tank finally topped off for the first time literally in the year. And I beat Teo, I beat all these guys. I would have been the best young rider on that mountaintop finish, but I'd already lost like 40 minutes the day before because I barely finished the stage. And that was kind of the first time when I realized, like, wow, like you got to get those carbs in, you know, like, and yeah, it's probably not ideal to eat brownies, but just the simple fact of getting that glycogen tank topped up with the carbohydrate, we all know how to do it. That just was like just night and day difference. I was a different human. And that's when I really realized you got to eat, you know, and that's kind of, that's my first little anecdote tip. It's way better to
Totally.
be stronger, especially for these young guys. Eat the food, let your body, don't fight your body's natural development, you know, like if you're going to be a big tall rider when you're 17, 18 years old, it's very possible that you have a body of a child still. And I see it
Totally.
all the time. These poor kids, they try and fight their natural development, and they just are miserable. They hate their lives, and they end up quitting. And I see it all the time, all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I basically
Yeah,
that's exactly what my experience was. I started riding when I was 14, and I think it was like 15 years old I kind of like fell in love with cycling. I remember I volunteered for like the first USA Pro Challenge, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is so cool. I want to be pro." And I just was like at that age just was going to do anything I could to get to that level. And I remember I had a
yeah,
school teacher in high school. He apparently used to race with Tom Danielson in collegiate racing, and I thought this guy was the bike Yoda. So I would just talk to this teacher every day, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of power to weight?" And I was like, "Well, what's that?" He's
yeah.
like basically like if
Oh
you want to
no.
be a top level cyclist, like you have to be as light as humanly possible. And so, yeah, I just thought, and like back then, the mindset was so different. You would just Chris Froome taking pictures of his like broccoli and fish for dinner, and it's like,
Yeah,
what? I guess that's what I got to do. I remember listening to a podcast of a top level world tour rider talking about like what he ate that day, and he's like, oh yeah, like I had eggs for breakfast, and then ate like a salad when I got back, and that's it. And I was like, oh, I guess that's what I
yeah,
got to do. So I
yeah.
think sadly for me, it took me, oh man, it literally took me about 7 years to get over like trying to be a skeleton. And then I just like realized probably like this is not working, and I felt so weak all the time, and I was just like gaunt, like so much skinnier than everybody else. And I just
Yeah,
started eating, and then it's like, man, my FTP went up by like 50 watts almost
yeah,
like within a matter of a couple of
literally.
years. And I wasn't even like training harder on the bike. But, if you look at the top level like world tour cyclists, Pogacar, Roglic, these guys are like muscular, ripped. They're not skeletons. If it was a good idea to try and be as light as possible, everybody would look like an emaciated skeleton. And usually, if there
Yeah,
is somebody like that, they're out the back pretty quickly. So I think,
yeah,
especially for young guys, like literally just train hard and like eat a lot of food. And I genuinely think
a
that's
lot.
like, you're not going to get, if you're training a lot, you're not going to get fat. And you're way better off being like even a little bit heavy than like starving yourself like 10 out of 10
Oh
times.
yeah, and I mean, I can't tell you like how many you see it all. I mean, it's less common now, but I've definitely seen guys in my career racing pros. Sometimes they're always from Belgium, these guys. They're just freakishly strong in their legs. Like these guys have watts for days, but they are really, really fat. And they will climb your face off. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
like you look at these guys and you're just like, my God, okay. That guy, he doesn't even look like a cyclist, but he just shelled me on a climb. And I'm here, the skinny climber that's like trying to eat salads all day. And like that guy, he's just stronger. Build your engine, build your legs, build your watts. And yeah, if you have the genetics to get to the world tour, then they're gonna start helping with your
Totally.
diet and that's when you can really fine tune it. But it's just a dangerous thing to do, especially as a young guy. Really, really dangerous.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I mean, like, let's even talk about, especially for a lot of the listeners doing amateur races, like, power to weight isn't even that important. Like, the races, so many of the races for amateurs are just like crits or flat-ish kind of punchy circuits, I mean, you're not going to be winning races as a featherweight climber on those kind of
No,
courses. So
no.
it literally makes no sense.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think of the races in the US. Like there's nothing there that I can think of, even in the pros, that power to weight ratio really has anything. I mean, like I'm not saying go and pound pizzas, but like I really think it's overblown. And I mean, you obviously agree. It's just way better to be
Oh yeah,
strong and healthy and not miserable, for sure.
totally. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, just I think if you just train hard and you focus on the training and just fueling properly and like just eating healthy, but like just giving your body what it needs, your body's naturally just gonna take care of itself. Like you're not you almost as
Exactly.
long as you're training hard, you don't need to worry about the weight. So I think just the take home point is like just focus on the training. Like I think people will fixate on these things that don't even matter, but at the end of the day, if you want to get fast at riding bikes, just ride your bike. And just
Yeah. Yeah.
don't worry about
100%.
all this other stuff. And if you're gonna be a good cyclist, you're gonna be a good cyclist. So
Yeah. Exactly. That's, I mean, body's got like exactly what you said. The body's going to naturally get to a place where it feels naturally the strongest. Where, and like I said, no, I see zero cyclists pounding pizzas and Ben and Jerry's. Although I used to eat pretty bad when I was younger, but I mean, we generally are quite a healthy group of human beings, and we like to eat healthy foods. And if you eat the combo of healthy food and training hard, like you said, your weight's gonna take care of itself. End of story.
absolutely. Well, you
Yep.
mentioned
Yep.
training hard. So what is your second tip for newer cyclists, or the dangers of what you might want to
Yeah.
avoid starting out?
Yeah, I mean, so as and again, this one's kind of more for these younger guys, but again, another tip that can go for anyone is when you're starting your body, when you don't have those miles in your legs and that consistent base on you, it takes years to get this base of fitness, right? We have to keep that in mind always. So when you're just starting out, you're going to have these natural kind of peaks and valleys in your sensations, in your level of your fitness. That's just unavoidable. But if you are training really aggressively as a youngster, a newcomer to the sport, meaning one day you really overextend yourself, the next day and the next maybe 3 days you're completely smoked. So you just sank your consistency those 3 days right there by doing one mega ride on Saturday, whatever. You just wasted Sunday, Monday, Tuesday because of that. Those breaks in your consistency, that is what really I feel like is hurting a lot of these newcomers. And when I was a young guy, it would have been way better for me to just say I'm going to train unbelievably simply, but I'm going to always train. I'm never going to get myself into a hole where I need to take 3 days easy because, like what I said, I did something stupid. I did a 6 hour ride with 400 TSS, and can also be with the diet. Like if you starve yourself, that's a major stress on the body. We want to just avoid these stresses, keep the consistency there. And that's what I didn't do when I was younger. And it took me years and years, and I wasted a lot of years of my U23 career to kind
Hmm.
of learn that. Like, wow, it's way better to just be at 90%. And again, I go back to it. If you're really a freak talent, you're going to get discovered someday. But being at 90%, you're going to be able to be discovered if you do have that talent. But if you're just up and down always doing weird, crazy things, it's just your consistency is not there, and it's just really difficult to build from that. So I would just say,
Hmm.
to sum that up, kind of, I'm going a little bit off off topic here, but just boil it down and make it as simple as you can, with the number one thing being training consistently for a long time. And in
Totally.
endurance sports, a long time is not 3 months. Like we're talking 2 3 years for this to really become something that you can really see the benefits. And that's kind of another big long topic, but just patience,
Absolutely.
consistency, chipping away brick by brick. It's hard to preach that point, but I think I make more or less sense with that.
Yeah, yeah, I think patience is so huge. I think get a lot of newer cyclists and you see, especially with Strava and power meters, you can look at somebody else's training, somebody who's been doing it for 15 years, and you're like, oh, I want that now, I want that now. And it's like you have to just be patient and you have to work for it. And like you said, consistency, there's no magic interval session that's just gonna take you
Yeah,
to the next level. It's just a matter of doing it every day, day in and day out, and keeping it
yeah,
simple. And I like to use other analogies of other things. Anything. If you want to get really great at something, that's what you have to do. You just have to practice it every day. It's not like if you want
yeah,
to become a great pianist, oh, if you play this one song all day today, you're gonna be so much better. It's like just like practice for an hour every day, and like then you'll get
yeah,
good at it. So I think really and truly, I
yeah,
mean, you can't rush your adaptations. You can't wish that you're going to get faster. You just have to get on the bike and do it every day. So don't worry about the outcome of your fitness. Just focus on training every day and enjoy it. Like just have fun with it, because at the end of the day, that's why most of us are doing it, is to have fun. So if you're making yourself miserable by worrying about other people or things out of your control, I mean, you're kind of just sucking the fun out of it. So just be the
right,
best you can be, and
yeah,
like that's all you can do. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting what you say about Strava. Like Strava's awesome. We all love it, but it is what you said exactly. Don't be looking at what Robert Hessink or Sepp Kuss is doing on Strava and be like, all right, like those guys have literally worked 15 years to get to that point where they can train that way. And if you're a newcomer, I mean, it's not flashy and it's not as cool, but it's just you gotta be patient and just
hmm
prioritize the consistency over anything else. And it'll
hmm
come, it'll come. That's what's cool about cycling. Like anything that is hard earned takes time to get, and that's what's so appealing about cycling is like
oh yeah.
we know that it's gonna take time, but like you just gotta be patient, straight up. Like you said, you hit it per right on the head.
hmm Yeah, and I always tell
Yeah,
people, like, if this sport was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. Like, it wouldn't be as amazing as it is. When I go back and look at the last 12 years of my training and like how hard I've worked to get to where I'm at, like it's just the best feeling ever. And it's like I'm so glad I stuck with it, even after I broke my third collarbone, or
yeah,
you know got smoked at every race this season. It's like I wouldn't trade it for anything. So
yeah, yeah.
so
No, it's so cool to see like just that progression. That's my favorite thing too. Just all those miles, all those hours, and it's just chipping away. And look, like you said, you're amazed at what you can do now,
mhm.
comparing that to what you could have done 5 years ago. It's just like unfathomable, you know.
Yeah, and I even
So
want to like preach to just even guys who are getting into the sport late. I mean, if you're 35, 40 years old, you can hit your best years when you are 50. I mean,
oh
I've
yeah,
coached people
totally.
who are like at fitter than they have ever been at age 50, and just
Oh yeah,
it's amazing what the human body is capable of. And I think the next point I had was kind of bouncing off of that is in order to maintain the consistency, we're talking zone 2. We're not talking consistently doing VO2 max intervals year round. We're
yeah,
talking the base miles. So if we're talking the
exactly.
most important adaptation that we're after for cycling is building the aerobic engine, and the the mitochondrial density and the muscle capillarization and all of those things. It's almost so much of it is about how much oxygen your body can metabolize, how much power you can generate aerobically, and the only way to do that is with the zone 2 miles. You got to train those
Yeah,
type 1 fibers, and it's hard to get people to understand that at first, but I think the most common thing I see with newer riders is just not getting the zone two in. And it's like, if you
100%.
just, I mean, there are some people where it's like, if you just did straight, somebody who's never done zone two before, if you just did straight zone two the whole winter, like as much as you can, you will become, you will be at a so much higher level come the next season. So
Oh, yeah.
I think a
Oh,
great
yeah.
way to approach it is like find a realistic amount that you can train that's going to be like something that you can do year round. So if maybe it's 10 hours, maybe it's 15 hours, maybe it's 7 hours, but pick a realistic amount of hours for you and try to hit that year round and
Yeah.
prioritize the base miles. The intensity is important, very important, but just getting those base miles in day after day after day is really what we're after.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's perfectly said. Like when I mentioned when I was a younger rider, if I would have done exactly when I said if I would have done a simpler approach, exactly what you just said. If I would have done literally only zone two, I would have been better because I did way too many spicy things trying to do the and it's easy to think like we all have this image of like whatever Lance doing his intervals under the rain and this image in our head of suffering like that's all in our head. But that often what you said is just the base is everything, those zone 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very, like you said, it's very hard to kind of preach that on people because it's boring and it's not
Mm-hmm.
spicy. But those base miles, those zone 2 miles are going to get you 95% of the way. And that's a lot better than doing a spotted zone two or VO2 session here and there, and then having a couple of days off because you're smoked, and then your consistency goes out the window. And then,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
I hear it all the time. Somebody goes out and does an hour and a half zone two ride on a Wednesday, and they're like, this feels way too easy. And it's like, okay, well, consistently getting on the bike every day, even when you don't feel like it, when you had a hectic day or it's cold outside or you got to get on the trainer, well, that's the hard part. You know, like not every
hmm
session has to be a
hmm
smash fest. The hard part is the consistency. So,
Yep,
just
exactly.
make that the priority.
Yep,
Yeah, so I don't
yep.
know if there's anything else that came to your mind.
I mean, that's for me, those are the two biggest things is just boiling it down, make it as simple as you can. Don't be stupid with the food. I mean, we you and I have the same points because we went through the same stuff and like, yeah, don't do
Yeah,
that.
I genuinely
Don't
think a
do
lot
that.
of people will relate to that, or people who are just getting
Oh,
into cycling are gonna think like, okay, like those are kind of the two. I think honestly, maybe the two most common things is people messing up their
yeah,
nutrition and just trying to smash too much. You don't have to make yourself miserable to be good at cycling.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, happiness watts. You remember when that kind of term was going around?
Oh yeah, I
Maybe
do
a few
remember that.
years ago, everyone was saying happiness watts, happiness watts. It is true though, I swear. Like it is true, and it's unfortunate that as a cyclist, you can make it miserable on yourself. You can make cycling miserable, and that's just not what we want. It's not what we want.
Definitely.
So
All right. Well,
yeah,
if you, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have any other topics you want us to hit on next time, we'll try to hit on it. We're gonna try to make this a regular thing. Keegan
done.
versus Landry conversations. So,
Yep,
um,
yep.
yeah. See you later.
See you guys. Thanks for coming. Peace.